So, welcome everyone to Love and the Planets. And today we're really focusing on Mercury going retrograde yet again. And I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
So here we go again, Mercury retrograde, the dreaded Mercury retrograde. And, you know, it's like everyone really knows about Mercury retrograde because it seems to be one of those planetary movements that kind of really affects us all on a pretty big scale. And particularly in relationships where communication is so vital. When Mercury decides to go retrograde, and of course it's not like it's really going backwards in the sky, but it's just the way we feel it, we experience it as a planet in terms of the Earth. And so it really does feel like communication kind of gets kind of awkward, and trying to make appointments or trying to send emails or texting or whatever. It really can create a little bit of havoc. I mean, what do you think about this one coming up online?
You know, it's certainly one of those things. You wouldn't think Mercury in relationships all that much, but boy, you know, you send that text message, "I'll see you at 7," and you don't get anything back from it because it's gone into the void and it's going to get delivered 3 days later or something like that. And then it's like, well, what do you mean you'll see me at 7? Yeah, yeah, it could really, it plays tricks. Mercury's the trickster, and it plays tricks on us in our relationships as well as everything else. It's very good idea to try to be as clear as possible.
Yes, particularly because also with this retrograde, it kind of changes signs. So, of course, it's just gone into Taurus, and we were just getting used to communication being a little more kind of practical based and a little more, grounded in some ways. And then it's going to zoom right back into Aries again. So it goes back into Aries on April 21st. And, you know, then the retrograde goes right on until May 2nd. And then we've got to allow about a week to 10 days really for the shadow period. So there's also this shift in energy where we're going like from Taurus right back to Aries. And Aries by nature, you know, as we talked about before, the Mercury in Aries is kind of usually quite zippy and dynamic. And when it's going retrograde, one of the problems is that words can come out very fast, but they can be a little jumbled, or, you know, there can be mistakes and a little more confusion with it all. So I would say really in relationships to kind of be a little more cautious during this time, and maybe to think twice before saying something, particularly if it's something very important, and really to kind of maybe write something down before expressing it.
Yeah, and try to have as much in-person or phone conversation as possible, as opposed to sending the text message or the email that is so liable to be misinterpreted, especially, as you say, with Mercury retrograde in Aries. You know, you could just spit it out and who knows. And make sure, and make sure you're sending it to the right person and so on. There's other stuff going on this week, though, that is worth paying attention to. It's a very busy week, and as we move from the first quarter moon to the full moon, it's always a very active time. And then Saturn stations on Friday. And Saturn stations, you know, from Thursday to Saturday, Saturn stations, I'm not a doom and gloom astrologer, Margaret. You know that.
Of course you're not. No, no, no.
Saturn stations are not a load of fun. And we're having, you know, the sun is going to be opposite Jupiter and then squaring Pluto at the same time. And Venus is going to square stationing Saturn on Saturday. So this weekend coming up is liable to be heavy.
Yeah, kind of a little intense maybe, but not that scorpionic intensity. It's more that there's so much going on. And I think it's kind of almost like a feeling of obstacles being in the way. It's a little bit like going over an obstacle course. And I think, you know, as we've talked about before with relationships, what can happen is that we can kind of dump that on the other person in the sense of saying, you know, it's your fault, I'm not happy, or I'm not getting things done, you're blocking me, you're stopping me. And actually, that's not what's really going on. What's happening is that just the energies are very kind of, it's like going through thick mud that, you know, we think we've got somewhere and they get kind of dynamic. But when they get dynamic, they're a little fiery. So it's not that dynamic that's nice to work with. So I think particularly, you know, taking care, I think on Friday, there's the sun in Aries opposite Jupiter, as you mentioned, in Libra. So we're really back to that kind of a little bit of tug of war between me or you. You know, do I compromise? Do I not compromise? Um, so there's quite a lot of fiery energy around. But of course, then because Venus in Pisces is squaring Saturn, then again, there's those roadblocks. So really kind of tread carefully this coming week, I think.
I think also Venus square Saturn is often a decision time. And with this energy of, you know, the sun in Aries opposite Jupiter in Libra, and the moon almost full and Saturn stationing, you know, it could be deadline time for some relationships. And if that's the case, that's the case. I think it's important that we not make it an arbitrary deadline, as we sometimes say, just so you do something that, you know, you could say, okay, this is it, we've had enough. It's important to recognize also, too, that Venus is still retrograde. It's coming to the end of the retrograde. It's not the exciting part of the retrograde, that kind of, you know, what if type of thing and the calls from the old lovers and so on. It's not that end of things. It's the much more internal side of things. But many people, I think, around the Saturn station may be feeling, wow, you know, I've learned a lot about relationship, and this is what it is. And, you know, Saturn can get you to see, you know, not the glass half full or half empty. Saturn can make you think, you know, you might fall on the floor, you know. It's not the easiest thing. So, you know,
Not that we want to be doom and gloom or anything, but yes.
Well, you know, all of these aspects, Margaret, you know, when things are going great and you're on solid ground, all of these aspects are little, you know, minor irritation, bumps in the road. When the relationship is sort of in a more vulnerable place, that's when all of these aspects will explode on you. That's when they'll make a big deal for you. It's not like everybody's going to be, but, you know, if your relationship is a little bit more vulnerable, I think you're more likely to have problems.
Well, what I would say as well is, you know, if relationships are vulnerable, maybe this is really not the week to have big conversations, you know, because when there's retrogrades, they're automatically times to review things, to rethink, to, you know, to really go a little bit inwards. So particularly with both Saturn, which is about those earthy boundaries and grounding, and with Mercury, which is about communication, really maybe review, maybe spend some time alone, or, you know, think things through or whatever, if your relationship is in a place that's feeling a little vulnerable. It just isn't a week that's really ideal to have big conversations, because they could get totally misinterpreted and things might blow up when they're not really meant to blow up.
I agree entirely. And I think also, too, you know, we often sort of defer our fun and date night type of thing for the weekend. And that's not really a great idea this week. Wednesday night with the moon in Leo and the moon waxing, that looks to me like a good choice. I think when you get to Friday, Saturday, yeah, maybe not so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So go on a retreat instead, or do some meditation. And, you know, regardless of your work schedule, just have a night out Wednesday night and go have some fun. And on that note, Armand, we will meet again next week. Take care.
Bye-bye, Margaret.
Bye-bye.